Okay, I'm going to repeat myself. I shouldn't have to do this, but once again I've been talking to someone online who is absolutely convinced that all religious people suffer from a mental disorder. So, I'm going to make a video that explains in a bit more detail why that's nonsense. As you listen to this, please understand, I'm not just making this up. I've been a psychiatric nurse for 30 years. I really do know what I'm talking about here. And the idea that religion equates to mental disorder is not only ridiculous, it's incredibly distasteful and arrogant. It's nonsense. So, let me explain. First of all, you need to understand that holding an irrational belief is normal. All humans are irrational because we evolved that way. We evolved certain heuristics. They're psychological shortcuts to help us negotiate the world because, quite frankly, we cannot be passing every piece of sensory information that bombards our senses every second of every day. We just can't do that. We would not be able to function. So, we have developed and evolved heuristics, they're mental shortcuts, that give us particular, predictable responses to certain stimuli. For example, if you're standing in the dark and there's a bush behind you, and you hear a twig crack in that bush. Now that might be a pussycat for all you know, but your immediate instinctive response is to think it's a threat. That's a heuristic. It's a genetic, inherent response. That's called a type 1 response. You make a type 1 response and you run away before you've even thought about it. At least you would have in the Pleistocene, because it could have been a tiger about to eat you. Now consider type 2. We call that a false negative. You think there's nothing there, and of course, if there isn't, you'd be okay. But if you make a type 2 error and think there's nothing there and there is, you're dead. You are not going to pass your genes on to the next generation. You are out of the evolutionary cycle. So, we have evolved to make type 1 errors. And we do it all the time. We see threat where it isn't. Another one is pattern seeking. We see faces in clouds. We see dragons in the embers of coal fires. We see Jesus on a piece of toast, or maybe, if you're into internet memes, in a dog's bottom. Because we like to find patterns whether they're there or not. We also do that with events. Let's say that something terrible happens to you. You lose your job because of a political decision. Someone else gains a promotion because of the same political decision. Well, the agency fallacy is your tendency, your assumption, which is quite regular, that humans make, that they benefited from this, therefore they must have planned it. You see a pattern that's not there, you ascribe agency to it, and if you can't find an individual to blame, then maybe that agent isn't another person. Maybe it's something supernatural. Maybe you fell over and broke your leg, or your sister died of appendicitis because that was the will of God. That's an agency fallacy, and it's irrational, but incredibly common. It may not be because of this God creature that people talk about. It may be that the fallacy is based upon the Illuminati's agency, or just fate, or the universe that did it, or maybe it was somebody else entirely. Maybe it was someone you don't know, or it was just them, whoever they are. You see how common these things are. We have type 1 and type 2 errors pattern seeking, and agency detection. They are the three heuristics that make us absolutely irrational. We all have them, and until we learn to recognize them, they're rampant. Even when we do recognize them, because we evolved to do this, we don't have an option. So believing irrational things cannot possibly be enough to demonstrate mental disorder, because if it was, well, everybody would be mad. Everyone would be diagnosed, and the diagnosis would have no meaning. Because what are you going to do? You can't treat everyone simply for being human. So we have to have some functionality within the diagnosis. If you can function within your society, you're probably not mentally ill. Or if you are, it's going to be so mild that it's not an issue. But the argument goes that if you have a delusion, which is, in psychiatric terms, the classic definition is a fixed, false belief not amenable to reason. So you can't be argued out of it. If you have a delusion, well, that's a symptom of mental disorder. It's a symptom of psychosis. And it is. It's one of Kurt Schneider's 3 first-rank symptoms, which are hallucinations in any modality. So that's auditory, visual, olfactory, gustatory, or tactile. Delusions, fixed false belief not amenable to reason, and thought disorders, which are about how you think, but not what you think. If you have 2 first-rank symptoms continuously for 6 months or more, then you may attract the diagnosis of schizophrenia, which is something that people do link with religious belief. But you need to have 2. I don't know many who do. Not only that, you need to be unable to function in your society. So just having the belief isn't sufficient unless, if you've only got 1 first-rank symptom, then you need to have 2 second-rank symptoms. And the second-rank symptoms, funnily enough, are all about functioning in your society. So, if you, for example, hear voices, and you are withdrawn and isolative, and you are anxious, then you may have enough to be classed as someone with a psychotic disorder like schizophrenia. However, the second-rank symptoms of withdrawal and anxiety need to be as a result of the auditory hallucination. If, for example, you're a voice hearer, but you also happen to be frightened to go out and you're withdrawn because you live in a block of flats surrounded by drug dealers, one of whom has threatened your life on several occasions, and that's why you're not going out, that's not a psychotic disorder. It's an anxiety state in someone who happens to be a voice hearer. According to Roman Esch's research, about 15% of the Western population hear voices. About 3% of the Western population have a problem with their voices and need assistance from mental health services. That means that about 1 in 5 voice hearers has a mental disorder. The other 80% are not. They're just voice hearers. It's unethical and ridiculous to assume that you can diagnose an entire demographic just because they disagree with you. And that's effectively what it means. If you're an atheist and you say that all religious people have mental disorder, what you're really saying is, all these people I don't know, I've never met, I haven't even heard their names, all of these people have a mental disorder because they disagree with me. How bloody arrogant is that? And the same works in reverse. I've seen posts from religious people taking them to task when they say that all atheists are mentally ill. Well, I'm sorry, but all of these points apply to you as well. Being religious is not a mental disorder, neither is not being religious. There is way more to it than just disagreeing with you, you arrogant fuckwit. Thank you for listening.